Welcome back to Hand Sewing with the HTA. In this episode we're going to teach you how to baste. So you'd hear said, I'm sure, places that the back stitch is the tailor stitch. Well, in my opinion, the tailor stitch is the basting stitch. And the basting stitch is probably the most commonly found stitch in the construction of garments. And what the basting stitch is all about attaching two pieces of material together, holding them in place until they're permanently sewn. So an example of that would be basting up the hem of the jacket, or adding or canvassing off the fore part, something like that. That's all basting. So it's a non-permanent stitch that you want to use it to hold the cloth in place. Now what we do with a basting stitch is we always tie a knot in it. The reason why I tie a knot is we can get a hold of the knot and we can pull out the stitch that way. So to put a knot into your thread, you want to catch it with your forefinger, wrap it around like so, and then you rub it between your two fingers. So you twist the cloth, twist the thread and pull it down like so. I'll show you that again. Wrap it around your forefinger like that, so it gets to there like that. So you got the two end, you got the end of it there, and then what you're doing is you're twisting the thread, the end of the thread into a loop, and then you're pulling it down, and that gets you a knot on the end of your needle. So then to baste, what you want to do is place the needle in. Now typically when I'm basting, I pick up about 3/8 of the cloth there like that, and I bring the knot just down to the thread, and then I'll jump forward. Now depending on what I'm doing will depend on the length of the thread. So if I'm canvassing off, I'll use long threads, but if I'm looking for, long stitches, but if I'm looking for control, I'll use shorter stitches. And we can see we're basting off there about 3/8 back from the edge. But the needle goes in, and then it comes out just at the top of my forefinger, and then again, and then at the top of my forefinger like that. And that's a straight baste. Now you can do things like you can do a diagonal baste, where you might just sometimes when you're basting, it's easier just to do it at an angle there like that. Maybe you're turning up the hem of a trouser, or you're basting in the shoulder pads or something like that there. You want to turn the stitch to the side there like that. Another way would be like a reverse back stitch, or a basting stitch, where you're actually going backwards rather than forwards like that. Again, that might just, wherever part you're working on the garment. I know, like whenever I'm sewing the right sleeve in, I'll use a stitch like this. I'll go the other direction with it, because that's the direction I'm heading in, or that's the direction I'm basting, like that. So yeah, basting stitch is just the stitch used with basting cotton, and it's a run stitch. You can also put in, every couple of stitches, you can put in a back stitch like that, and that just stops you from getting it tight here. So you're basting down there like that, and then you don't want to, if you over pull the stitch, you can tighten up the other stitches. But if you put in a back stitch there like that, and then go forward, if you accidentally pull it tight, you're only pulling it tight to that back stitch there like that. There you go. So that's your basting stitch. And then to finish off your basting stitch, I just fell out of the needle here, but cut it so I can get it through the needle easier. When you stop it there like that, you want to just tie it off either with 1 or 2 stitches. Just tie it off there like that. Now when I'm actually holding the thread, and how the thread, people often wonder, how does the thread not pop out of the needle more often, and whenever you're pulling it through the cloth. So what I do is, as I'm sewing, I keep the thread between my small finger, my index finger here. Just keep the thread there, held there like that. So as I'm passing through, holding it here like that. Now, whenever we're putting intention into a thread, you get to about there, we do that. we don't pull it this way, we lift our little finger up. So I'll show you that again. So drawing it out, you get to there, just flick it with my little finger, and that puts the tension in. So you can either flick it with your finger, or you can turn your whole hand. It doesn't really matter which, as long as you do one or the other. The last thing you want to be doing to get the tension in the thread is just pulling it straight up, because then you won't get the same amount of tension every time. Tension is actually very important when it comes to hand sewing, like pick stitching or felling stitching or back stitching or anything like that there. You need to get the same amount of tension into it. Same with buttonholes. So just either a little flick with the little finger or a turn of the hand, and that puts the tension into the stitch, that closes the stitch. Generally we certainly don't put in tight basting stitches. Basting stitches should be loose. So there should always be a little bit of give in a basting stitch. So what happens is you end up pulling the cloth together as you're making it, and then when you take out the basting stitches, the cloth relax, and then what you can end up with what's called a slub. A slub is a little bit of cloth there, it's a little bit of length to sort of caught between, you know, two seams. But it's like really, you get on the ends of your shoulders with that, or you know, you get it. That'd be probably one of the most notable places you get it. So you don't want to pull a stitch tight. You just want to close the stitch, and then just a little flick with the wrist, a little flick of the little finger will do that for you. So yeah, when you're finished the basting stitches, give it like 1, 2 stitches, and then I generally hold it there like that, twist it, and break it off the end of my thumb, and then that's the stitch line done. So that's the basting stitch. That's all we have time for in this lesson. Thank you for watching.